Okay, so the next question says, which is one way in which bonds do not generate income for investors? One says bonds appreciate in value. Two says bonds pay a specified amount at maturity. Three says that bonds pay interest, and four says bonds pay dividends. So bonds are a type of financial asset that people can invest in and put their money in. And the way it generally works is that you buy this bond and you give the bond, the debtor, you give the debtor your money, and then in exchange you receive this bond. And this bond is basically a promise of several things. First is that after a certain length of time, you will receive the principal amount of your bond back. And so if you loan somebody $1,000 and they gave you a bond, at the end of the bond's predetermined date, you will receive $1,000 back in principal. That is known as a bond reaching maturity. When the bond's predetermined time expires and you receive your principal back, that's called being a bond reaching maturity. The other question you might ask is, why would you invest in the bond if the only thing you get back is the amount of money you put in at the first place, which also has not earned any interest over that time? The answer is, well, the debtor will also provide both interest and dividend payments. And so that's going to depend on what kind of bond it is. Some of them might pay annual dividends or interest payments. Some of them might pay monthly. Some of them might pay no interest at all and give an extra amount of money or overall interest payment at maturity. So there's a lot of different ways to set up a bond. But the idea is that you are compensated for the risk you take on by buying a bond through the interest and dividend payments. And throughout all of this, bonds can also change in value based on the competing interest rates in other investments. And so a bond that promises to return you 2% in interest is going to raise in value if the interest rate drops even more below 2%, and therefore this bond is suddenly returning a much higher interest rate than other financial instruments. And so all that being said, that hopefully gives you a good understanding of what kind of financial assets bonds are. And then looking at the specific question, it says, which is one way in which bonds do not generate income for investors? And so looking down this list, all four of these things are true. Bonds do appreciate in value sometimes, and you can sell bonds prematurely to someone else and reap the value, and that could be income. Bonds do pay a specified amount of maturity. Bonds do pay interest sometimes, and bonds do pay dividends sometimes. But the correct answer here is going to be two, that bonds pay a specified amount at maturity. Not because that's not true, right? Bonds do pay back the principal amount at maturity, but the fact that that principal amount does not function as income for the investor. It is simply a return of the money that the investor previously loaned to the debtor, right? And so that's the primary reason that number two is going to be correct. And so we can take a look at the previous year's answer to confirm. So the previous year also said two, bonds pay a specified amount of maturity, and they write that bonds are debt obligations or financial instruments expressing indebtedness issued by the borrower to a lender as debt security, under which the issuer obliges himself or herself to pay interest to the holder of the bond or to pay the principal amount at a later date, also known as the maturity date. Investors buy bonds to hold them until maturity such that profits can be earned from the interest payments. Bonds appreciate in value and pay interest. However, investors cannot generate income from bonds by the specified amount they pay at maturity. I think we want to clarify the amount paid at maturity is equivalent to the initial principal paid to the issuer, and so this would never yield positive income independent of other income flows. And so that's going to be a little bit of clarification, but overall this is going to be a good explanation of the right answer.